In this video, we will show you how to replace your radiator assembly on this Honda Accord. This will be located along the front of your engine compartment. Let's get into it. Okay friend, let's get started on our job. The first thing you need to do is make sure that your cooling system is cool to the touch. Assuming it is cool, you want to carefully press down on your radiator cap and turn that counterclockwise to remove it. We'll lift this up and away from our face, of course, just in case there is any pressure. A quick inspection of the seal and set it aside. Now let's make our way safely under the front of the vehicle so we can drain the coolant. Under the front center of the vehicle, you're going to find the petcock, which is the drain for your radiator. You can find it in this rectangular port on your lower splash shield. Make sure you have a collection bucket under this area so you can recycle the fluid properly. We'll take hold of this valve at the end here, turn this counterclockwise. Once it starts loosening, fluid should start making its way out. Allow your coolant to drain. Once your coolant has finished draining, we'll continue on to closing up that drain. Just want to turn that clockwise until it's completely bottomed out. Double check, make sure that's secure, clean up your mess. Let's start removing our lower splash shield. To remove the splash shield, you'll find that it has several 10mm headed bolts holding it in place. We'll start over on the driver's side. On the driver's side of the vehicle, looking under here in the wheel well area, you're going to find that you have a 10mm bolt facing straight down, and then a little bit forward from there, you have one that goes from side to side. Inspect your mounting hardware as you remove it, replace it as necessary. Get this one over here. Now there is mounting hardware that makes its way across the center, but typically it's a good idea to remove both sides mounting hardware before you move to the center. Over on the passenger side, you're only going to have one piece of mounting hardware, and typically this is a plastic push clip. Push clips come out in different ways, but typically you just want to use a trim tool. Remove the center portion, and then remove the outer portion as well. A quick inspection of your push clip, of course, to make sure it is reusable, and now we can continue on with our mounting hardware, making our way across the vehicle. Now we can remove some 10mm headed mounting bolts. Take hold of the shield, give it a wiggle, and remove it from the vehicle. Quick inspection and we'll set that aside. Let's start removing the mounting bolts for the radiator cooling fan. You'll find that you have a 10mm right here and a 10mm right there. We'll use some penetrant in these areas. This one's a little bit difficult to get to. I'll be using a ratcheting wrench. If you were to look along the center of the radiator, along the backside here, you're going to find a 10mm headed bolt tucked up inside this portion. We'll be using a 10mm wrench. Let's get this one over here now. This one looks very rusted. Might break on us. Let's move up in this area now. You're going to find an electrical connector for the cooling fan. It does have a locking tab. Go ahead and squeeze in on that, disconnect it, and a quick inspection for corrosion. There we are. That looks good. Along the front of the vehicle, we're going to remove the two 10mm headed bolts that hold this AC line bracket in place. Take hold of the bracket and flip it towards the rear of the vehicle. Now we can start removing the two 10mm headed bolts that hold our AC fan to the radiator. Now it's time to remove the upper radiator hose from the radiator. We'll loosen our 8mm headed clamp just enough that we can slide the hose out of the way, a quick inspection of the hose, and we'll move along. Keep in mind there could be coolant still in this area. You want to be extremely careful. Double check to make sure that hose is soft and pliable and not torn, worn, or damaged. We'll set that aside. Now we'll take hold of the fan assembly and start lifting it up and out of here. You may have to flex your AC lines as you do so. A quick inspection and we'll set this aside. Now let's remove the two 10mm headed mounting bolts that hold the engine cooling fan to the radiator. You'll find that the one all the way over towards the driver's side also has a bracket that leads down. Hold on to the fan. We'll remove that bracket. Now as we lift this up, you will find that you have wiring harnesses along the driver's side of this, but you should be able to gain access to them easier if you lift this up. For the larger connector, you'll find that you do have a locking tab. It's on the outboard side right there. Just want to squeeze this in. Pop that free. Quick inspection for corrosion. There's one more electrical connector down in this area, but we're not going to disconnect the wires from each other. You actually want to disconnect the entire bracket from the fan assembly. You can do that using a small pick or a small screwdriver. We'll make our way right along the lock area. Gently start pulling that away. Once it is unlocked, you should be able to slide it up and off of the fan. There we are. Remove the fan, quick inspection, set it aside. Now we can move straight under the area where the fans were located. We have a hose that leads down along the bottom here. You want to squeeze on the 3 ears of the clamp. Slide that clamp out of place. Continue on to removing the hose from the fitting down along the bottom there. If it's stuck in place, use a hose pick. Be careful not to damage your hose. When you go to disconnect this hose, make sure you have a collection receptacle under here so you can recycle that fluid properly. There we are. Now let's move along towards the passenger side here. We're going to remove the other hose leading to the bottom of the radiator. These clamps range in sizes. I'll be using a 1/4 inch on this one. Take hold of that hose. We want to try to pull it off of there. There we are. We'll let that drain into our collection bucket. Moving along, we're going to continue to the lower radiator hose. On our application, I can see that the clamp is facing down. I can't gain access to it at this point, so I'm going to loosen the top mounting hardware so I can lift up on the radiator. If you can gain access to that, go ahead and remove the clamp and the hose from the radiator. Before we remove the upper hardware, remove your overflow hose from the top of the radiator. To remove the mounting hardware, we'll be using a 10mm. Remove and inspect the upper mount. Do the exact same thing on the opposite side of the radiator. Now we can take hold of the radiator, lift it up as needed. Let's get the clamp off of here. This one's an 8mm. Quick inspection of that hose. Remove the radiator from your vehicle. There it is, friend. Before we can install the brand new radiator, it's important to pay attention to the mounting points. Looking along where the radiator should sit, you should find that you have 2 rubber mounts. I've got one here, still soft and pliable. Make my way over. If you don't see one in that position, it's common for it to be stuck on the radiator. If that's the case, just go ahead and pull it right down and off of there and slide it into place. Let's prepare our brand new radiator for installation. Along the back side of the radiator, where each of your ports are, you're also going to find that you have mounting points. You'll also find that you have a hardware kit, and in that hardware kit, you're going to have several of these square adapters, and you'll also have one other locking type clip. As for the square type adapters, we want to be looking for the square notches. There's 4 of them across the bottom of the radiator. Let's start there. When installing these, have a close look. You'll find that each of them will have a locking tab. It only protrudes up a little bit, but you want to make sure that that's facing towards the locking mechanism, essentially where the bolt would be. Just take that, slide it right into position, listen for a click. Typically it will move around, but it should not fall out. Continue down the line. Now looking along the backside, along the top of the radiator, we're going to continue on with our square adapters. The next one here. Last one for the square adapters on the far corner. Next we have our locking clip. This is going to fit right in this area. Now we'll continue on with our locking clip here. We want to make sure that we have the flat area facing towards where the bolt head would be, along the back side of the radiator. Just slide that up in position. Align your mounting bolt hole, and now we can get this over to the vehicle. Before we install the radiator, we'll just make our adjustments to the clamp if necessary. Start bringing this radiator down into its mounting points. You want to be careful not to cause any damage to your brand new radiator or the AC condenser located in front of it. We'll just get this aligned with its mounting points along the bottom and press it down gently. You can guide it in if necessary. There we are. Fits right down in there. We'll just give it a wiggle, making sure that it does not fall out down along the bottom. Let's get the upper mounting brackets in place. Start in each of the mounting bolts. We'll pause on this one, do the same on the opposite side. Snug them up, torque those to 7.2 foot-pounds. Get this hose on here. Make our way back down to the bottom here. We're going to install our hoses. Start with the lower radiator hose. Slide that into position here. We'll press that as far as we can onto the radiator. Ensure that you can see hose on both sides of the clamp and tighten up your clamp. If it feels like it skips, you need to replace that clamp. Double check to make sure your hose is completely secured. Move along. Remove your protective cover, assuming you have not already. We'll make sure we have a clamp on this. Slide that onto the adapter. You have to press it on there. get the clamp in the center area here. Once again, making sure that we can see hose on both sides of it. Snug it up. Double check, make sure it's secure. Now we can get our next hose on here. I've got my clamp on my hose already. Just slide this onto the adapter. There we are. Double check, make sure we're far enough. I can feel the end of the line right up here. We'll get the clamp back in its proper position. Double check, make sure we can see hose both sides. Staying in this area, we'll continue on with our 10mm headed mounting bolt down along the bottom here. We're going to start it in just a few threads. Want to make sure that you do leave it loose because we have to slide the fan in and behind this up against that radiator. Now it's time to install our AC fan assembly. Along the bottom we have that hooked area that will fit over our mounting bolt. Along the driver's side of the fan you're also going to have your mounting bracket for your wiring and of course the wiring connector there. We'll start bringing this down so we can reattach our wiring to the bracket. Slide that right on there. Just press that on. There we go. Listen for a click. Slide this down a little further. We're going to slide it over that bolt, like I said, up against the radiator. Be careful not to cause any damage. There we are. Attach your electrical connector along the driver's side. We're going to press this in, listen for a click. Give that a little tug, make sure it's secured. Align your upper mounting point here. We also need to make sure that we align this bracket as well. Just bring that right over. Continue on to starting in each of your mounting bolts, snug them up and torque those to 5 foot-pounds. Now we can move along to the 2 lower mounting bolts for the AC fan. We have one in the far corner towards the passenger side, and as you move your way towards the driver's side, you'll have another mounting bolt. For that third mounting bolt towards the center there, we're going to wait until we get under the vehicle. When looking at your bolts, you want to make sure you have the longer of the 2 bolts for the one that we're going to leave loose. There we are. Get that started in there a couple threads. We'll do the same to the other one here. Let's get this one in the far corner. Once again, leaving it loose. Let's install the engine cooling fan. We'll carefully take this and slide it down into place, being extremely careful for that radiator. Once again, if you need to flex the AC lines, you can do so. Just be careful not to cause any damage. As we bring it down, we're going to be paying attention to the alignment points. We want to make sure that they fit over those bolts. We want to be as close to the radiator as possible. Once you feel as though you do have it slid into the proper position, go ahead and take hold near the center, give it a little tug, trying to pull it away along the bottom. Assuming that feels as though it's secured, we'll continue up along the top. Put this in here. Try to get our other mounting bolt in. Start them in, snug them up, torque those to 5 foot-pounds. Make sure we have our reservoir hose in place. Resecure your AC line. When we get that bracket in place, start in each of your 2 mounting bolts and snug them up. Get that upper radiator hose in place. Safety hose on both sides of that clamp. If this bracket came dislodged, go ahead and swing that over. That should slide onto the AC line, essentially holding the two together. There we are. We'll make our way under the passenger side front of the vehicle. It's time to reconnect the electrical connector. Take hold of that, carefully press it down into proper position. Little tug to make sure that's properly secured. Along the bottom of this area, we already have a couple of our mounting bolts in. We still have the one towards the center to start in. We had a little bit of a difficulty from the top. We'll do it from the bottom. In the center of the radiator, make sure that the drain is tight. Let's get our splash shield on here. For the splash shield, you want to make sure that it goes underneath the forward shield along each of the 3 places for the mounting hardware. There we are. With that in place, we can start in the mounting hardware. We're not going to tighten any of this until we have all of the mounting hardware started in. Make our way over towards the passenger side now, same process. This one in here. Let's get this push clip in here. For the push clip, you want to press in the outer portion first and lock it in by the center. Now we can snug up those 10mm headed bolts. Make our way into the corner here. Let's get the last one. Let's make our way back up under the hood. It's time to fill the cooling system. When you fill the cooling system, it's important to make sure that you use the manufacturer's specified fluid, and you want to make sure you burp out any air in the system. To easily insert the fluid, we'll be using a funnel. Other people will have a specialty tool that functions by using vacuum. Use this funnel system here. Add some coolant. Allow it to go in. Once you have that cooling system full, the next thing we'll do is remove the funnel from the top of this area and reinstall our radiator cap. Now that we've finished filling the cooling system, the next thing that we need to do is run the vehicle to burp out any air. When doing so, we're going to allow the vehicle to run to get up to normal operating temperature. Once you hear the cooling fans turn on, you want to make sure that you have plenty of heat coming out of the vents. Turn off the vehicle, allow it to cool down again, and we're going to recheck the coolant level, just to ensure that it's topped off up to the maximum right up along the top here. After that, you want to make sure you top off your overflow tank up to the maximum. Continue on to closing the hood and take your vehicle for a road test. Thanks for watching.
When only the best will do, demand TRQ. The only company that lets you view before you do. TRQ is committed to offering the highest quality aftermarket auto parts that are engineered for peace of mind. Thanks for using and viewing with TRQ.